Are you ready? It's time for a brand new audio experience. We are here to revolutionize the way you live. This is the Kenny and Nikka Lifestyle Podcast.
All right, and we are here now in the present with our first episode of the Kenny and Nikka Lifestyle Podcast. I am your host, Kenny, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, Nikka. Good morning, Nikka, here on the West Coast.
Good morning, Kenny. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
So, as it goes with podcasts, we sort of wanted to have a inaugural episode to explain why we are worthy of your attention with a podcast. But this is going to be a lifestyle podcast, first and foremost. And Nikka and I live this kind of life where we basically do everything together. We don't, but we do a lot of things together. We cook together. We take in media together, whether it's movies or shows. And generally, if a new game comes out, we will sort of play that congruent at the same time so we can enjoy it together and talk about it.
Spot on. I would agree with that.
We like to go on walks and hikes together. We like to take in some of the more naturous spots of Southern California. Where we are currently residing in Southern California. As I pursue dreams of Hollywood, in the meantime, we thought we would share some lifestyle topics that have become more of a part of our life in recent history. I think maybe that's the best way to put it. But the main reason that we're here today and starting this adventure is because since December of 2019, we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary next month. But since about December of 2019, Nikka and I have dramatically changed our relationship with food. And it has had a profound impact on both of our lives, I would say. What say you?
Oh, yes, definitely. And in the process, we learn a lot. And that's why we decided to share our experience with it and information, how to go about it. We try to be more entertaining. It's just our life. Put it on a display and maybe somebody listening to it can learn a thing or two and say like, hey, I can do that too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we both have become very health conscious as a result of the way we've changed our relationship with food.
Yes.
But I also would argue that it's kind of against the mainstream thinking when it comes to eating in 2023. You're not going to hear a lot of this information that we are going to be providing you through like mainstream media sources. And I don't want to give away the cart right now because we are going to circle back to this topic in a few minutes.
Okay.
But you did hit the nail on the head in the end there in saying, I think we've become almost like nerds about this stuff a little bit. And we feel confident now, 4 years into the process, into the journey, that we have enough to finally share with other people and provide value. And you said pass along a tip or two, and I hope it goes beyond that. I hope people embrace this way of thinking a little bit because they're missing out otherwise, you know?
They are.
And we have gained what we call food freedom as a result of our lifestyle change. And we're going to get all into it starting in a few minutes.
Sure. I want to just point out we've been living this for 4 years and the mainstream experiment, it's been going on for 60, 70 years, and the results are just not there.
Well, I mean, I think what you're really just trying to say is we've not evolved into a very healthy
Society.
Country, you know. At least I don't see a lot of the rest of the world's people out in public, but when you go out into the world, I think the ratio that you see of people is leaning more on the heavier side of the scale. And as someone that used to be on the heavier side of the scale, I can't speak for all of the people, but for me personally, it was definitely affected my life, my confidence, my overall feelings, whether I was depressed or not. So these are things that don't get talked about in the mental health conversation enough. Food can affect how you feel mentally.
How you feel when you eat food.
We're going to get into all of it coming soon.
Sure.
Lots of teasers here in the early stages. I know, but we got to get this out. Sorry. We'll get back to food in a little bit.
We're also going to be talking about other stuff than food.
Yeah, we have. Well, first off, Nikka and I have a baseball podcast, which is going to continue to live on, but it's going to be a separate entity. So this is a shameless plug, more or less, that we also are doing a baseball podcast. And if you enjoy the game of baseball and you didn't find us through that podcast, you should go and follow us there too, because we've really kind of come into our own in the last couple months. We covered the whole season, by the way, 2023. We lasted the entire time. We had a lot of changes along the way, but I would argue that they were changes for the betterment of the actual programming that we were putting out. And by the end of it, I felt like really confident in the show and that it was actually starting to come into its own. I want to keep doing it, and hopefully next year we'll maybe tweak how we cover the regular season going into it, because I think we initially just made it way too unmanageable.
Yeah, we evolved, if you will. We evolved with food, and we evolved with our baseball part.
Yeah, well, it's a common theme among these parts. All right, well, it is the off season, so we are going to continue doing like one baseball episode a week, but we felt like this was a good time now to branch out into our lifestyle podcast, and we are genuine about wanting to help people with this lifestyle podcast. As I said, Nikka and I do a lot together. We cook together. I'm mostly on the grill outside and Nikka's in the inside by the stove. Nevertheless, we're both doing it at the same time and we're kind of working together to get our meal served.
We do a lot of grilling though.
We do. Yeah. It's a fun part of it. We'll talk about all of that. But we also watch movies and shows together, and we don't really watch anything on our own that I remember. Sometimes you might catch something while one of us is in the shower or whatever, but nothing like we make plans to watch things together. And so we thought we would maybe share those experiences with our audience since we're here, since we're already talking about other things in life like food and stuff, but we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach maybe than like, we don't want to just review what we watched and like outline it for people. We would rather get into the why. We feel like why is one of the things that's missing from modern mainstream media.
Why should you spend your time watching it?
Why you should watch this show or why you should watch this movie. Getting into more of the feelings of it. Like, oh, this movie really had me on the edge of my chair. Like it was intense from start to finish or something. So we're going to be selective about what we share and what we feel maybe is like the best of the best without maybe tearing down other movies or shows. And we don't want to be negative and talking about why we didn't like stuff. We'd rather be sharing like things we enjoy because we get enough of it.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point.
But we also kind of wanted to do a fun thing too, where we maybe look at older movies like from the 70s, 80s and see how they've held up. I'm a child of the 80s and so is Nikka. So I think we have a lot of love for the media that we grew up with. And it doesn't always hold up the best over time, unfortunately. And a part of you still loves it, like the movie Excalibur, for example. I love the movie Excalibur, but it does not hold up over time. It is boring and slow and just bad choreographed action fights. The only thing that might hold up is the soundtrack, the music and stuff. But luckily, we've gotten enough King Arthur remakes over the years to keep that story fresh.
I thought you'd warned them.
I did. I don't speak English good.
I speak it better than you.
Despite having like Liam Neeson and Patrick Stewart and all these great actors, these great men who would go on to become great actors.
It's just interesting to see how movies have evolved from the 80s, 90s, and current.
Nevertheless, though, like Empire Strikes Back holds up as clear as day, especially with that new transfer on Disney Plus. That is not a plug for Disney Plus, by the way. Damn, raising their prices. Mickey Mouse. Okay, we also, as I mentioned, do some gaming together. So we thought we'd apply this formula as well to games. And in fact, I kind of want to tease that Nikka and I have already recorded a why you should play Cyberpunk 2077 2.0. For those of you that don't know, Cyberpunk 2077 is a video game that came out in 2020, but just this past September, they had their first expansion released for the game where you get like a new map and a new area to kind of like play through. But it also got a 2.0 update to the game itself, which updated the menus and some of the other way the game actually functions underneath the hood. So we've already recorded that, and we have that on deck to share with you.
Another plug.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's kind of how we're going to do some media podcasts sprinkled in here. And before anyone asks, I do not have any idea what the schedule is going to be yet. But we're going to work on that and figure that out probably when we launch this podcast itself in the coming days and weeks. All right. Last thing is Nikka and I love to be active and be outside, and we live in Southern California, which is one of the best places in the country to live if you like to live that kind of a lifestyle. That sun comes through unfiltered almost every single day out here. So even if it only gets up to like 70 or 72, it can still feel really, really warm in that sun, and we do love it.
Oh, we do. Except today, it's very, very cloudy.
But we're going to start documenting our trips to national and state parks that we go to and hiking, and kind of give our thoughts about which ones are worth your time and maybe which ones you should skip, because there's quite a few of them down in these here parts. People don't realize, like, one of the reasons why Hollywood is traditionally located where it's located is because of the vast landscapes that you can see around Hollywood in like a circular 100-mile radius. You can get snowy mountains with pine woods, and you can get deserts, and you can get some forestry and, valleys and everything in between. It's almost all here, which is why it's popular for filming, or one of the reasons. But we are going to get out and enjoy some of that and share with you guys what we like best and what we think is worth your time to see. So we will be doing that as well on this podcast and sharing some of those things. And a lot of these things, by the way, we're hoping to have some video components for online with YouTube, but we're going to be working out that as we go as well. So stay tuned. We are content creators. As I said, I'm on the editing side of things, trying to find my way in Hollywood right now. But while we do that, we got to share this with you as well.
Also, you can let us know what movie would you like us to see, whether it holds up through time.
Well, no spoilers, but it is the holiday season approaching. We are almost to Thanksgiving, so that should give you an indication of when we're recording this. We're probably about, a week or 10 days away?
When is the Thanksgiving?
I don't know, but I would...
20th?
Around the 25th.
Oh, yeah, then we are...
Just to give an idea of when this is, we're in like mid-November. So we're going to be having some holiday movies come up, and I thought there would be some that might be fun to play through on this podcast, like Christmas Vacation came to mind.
House sure does look swell, Clark.
Thanks, Eddie. I hope it enhances your holiday spirit. Dear Catherine. Eddie?
I hope you didn't do this all on our account, Clark. Kids, come on out here and see what Uncle Clark's done to the house.
We'll see what comes up.
There's a lot of holiday movies.
There's a lot of movies, a lot of video games. Like I said, we're just going to promote what we enjoyed and why we enjoyed it. We really want to be specific about the whys here, because I think, again, why is one of the questions that is one of the OG journalistic questions that sort of disappeared from mainstream media. A lot of news reports and stories on the media channels don't get into the why this is happening. One small other thing I wrote down here that I didn't get to was we also want to be, in conjunction with the lifestyle and the food, be talking about maybe some exercising tips for people, especially at home when you have kids, or you find excuses not to go to the gym, like maybe I do. My wife is very disciplined, and Nikka goes to the gym like 3 or 4 times a week. You can boo me, but look,
you don't need a gym to be healthy.
I jump rope at home. I do some push-ups.
Yeah.
I'm actually starting the perfect push-up program right now, and I'm very committed to it. We did day 3 yesterday together. And we're going to document this. This is going to be a podcast in the coming weeks, probably. So
we are on a day 3, and this is my first time doing those push-ups, by the way, for the 21 days.
Well, that's nice. She finally listened to me, folks. She finally took the plunge into push-ups.
You accepted the challenge.
I did 72 yesterday. I've been really good about doing the perfect push-ups, but I've never disciplined myself to go through their program. It's been a while, actually. I did a couple years back commit myself to the program. I think I did it for like 21 or 42 days straight. Like I did 2 cycles basically.
Okay.
And you're supposed to do push-ups every other day, basically. And it is not a huge time commitment.
It's not.
Literally, we stop ourselves a lot from doing this stuff, and we got to stop being afraid. I'm going to stick to it, and I'm going to get through one 21-day cycle and then another. And part of, I think, documenting whether you're eating or whether you're exercising, like, is really important. It keeps you honest. You know, we all have phones and selfie phones on us at all times nowadays. Pop that phone out, man, and also share the love. Spread the word to other people that, like, you can do it too, you know? Like, I'm out here doing it. You can do it too.
Oh, definitely. And it's a really good feedback you might get from people.
Yeah, I'm a home gym guy. I love doing push-ups at home. I like to do, like, some jumping rope is a new thing we've added, but I enjoy that. So yeah, we'll have some tips for how to, like, use the house and use your home to keep yourself honest, you know? And if you are a parent or you have kids, maybe they'll join you. Never too early to get the body muscle memory. It's never too early.
It's not. And also, the older you get, the harder it is to make more muscle, to get that lean body mass.
Don't we know it? Damn you, Nikka, bringing up those sour points. Well, you brought up aging, and I think it's a good way to segue into the real crux of what we hope this lifestyle podcast becomes, which is our relationship with food and how we were able to achieve what we've been able to achieve with food. And a lot of it started once upon a time. I think we started doing actual change in December of 2019. As I said earlier. But if I can trace back the change to a specific moment, I feel like it was the Fed Up documentary that maybe started all of it.
It was a documentary about sugar.
Yes. And this was just a few months before that. And this was like in September of 2019. And I was working as an editor at a company that would put out a lot of snacks for their employees. They were labeled as healthy snacks, as Nikka just said. There was everything from, like, barbecue Fritos, yogurt-covered raisins. I'm trying to think of some of the other...
I remember you had those mini cookies.
Yeah, there was a lot of mini cookies because I would bring some home for you to have as well.
Yeah, I remember those. They were
spreading the drugs around. Sugar is a drug.
It is?
I think the Fed Up documentary, I think it probably stopped short of calling it a drug, but it is literally like an addictive drug.
Yes, it is. And on top of it, you don't see the results right away. So you might not think, oh, it's a drug the way cocaine does or cigarettes or alcohol affects you right away. This takes years.
And it's a root cause of not just diabetes, but also obesity. In this country, and it's not necessarily viewed as that today still, but we have a childhood diabetes obesity epidemic in this country now, where more kids than ever are diabetic and or obese, like younger and younger ages. Even you have kids now starting puberty at younger and younger ages now. A lot of it is not looked at as a root cause of the food that's being eaten by these people, and I think we're here to tell you that it should be first and foremost at the top of the list. That's our experience now going through this. So as we watched this movie Fed Up, which was narrated by Katie Couric, by the way, so if you're wondering what crazy scientist was prescribing or doing this research, it was Katie Couric, you know, like famous CBS broadcaster, and she interviewed and asked tough questions of people like former President Clinton, for example. Was the legislation that was passed during your time as president helpful? Or did it make the problem worse? You know, like it made the problem worse. The food bill that Michelle Obama signed or promoted, I should say, she didn't sign it, but the food bill that she became like a plank. Every first lady takes up this cause, right? And Michelle Obama's was all about food and nutrition for kids and everything. And this documentary, I remember, it made me so angry because it showed how pizza was considered a vegetable in this legislation that
yes,
was signed into law because Amy Klobuchar needed to save Swanson food factory jobs in Minnesota. Otherwise, she might not get reelected.
That just shows you your health is being treated as commodity.
It's up for negotiation every day behind closed doors. Well, the government problem aside, you have the power to change and decide what you want to eat still. And no one can force you to eat something else. We all have limiting factors like money, that play a part in it. However, nothing that Nikka and I are going to be talking about or promoting on this podcast is unachievable for 95% of us out there.
I would even argue with you, the way we eat will save you money on food. Knowing how much food costs nowadays, how much money you spend at groceries.
I wonder how we might have to like do an experiment or compare with other people, but we do buy a lot of expensive food though, like eggs and red meat and steaks and bacon.
We do.
These are tending to run on more of the pricier side when people look at like Pop-Tarts and bacon, and eggs, both are breakfast foods, right? To people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, Nikka's really bad about this, you guys. You're going to have to bear with her. She has a trouble divorcing herself from her current life to her past life.
Wow, throw me under the bus.
Yeah, I am.
Thanks.
No problem. You need to loosen up over there. But you got to help people. So when it comes to Pop-Tarts and bacon and eggs, a box of Pop-Tarts is cheaper, but it's also a lot less nutritious for you.
Well, then I will ask you a question then. How many Pop-Tarts are you going to eat in order to feel satiated? Are you going to eat the 2 that comes in a box or 4?
I don't think people that eat Pop-Tarts know the answer to that question.
Probably not.
They don't care. They're not looking at food that way. You're jumping the gun. I'm sorry.
Okay, my bad.
No, it's okay. You got to chime in, but don't jump the gun.
All right.
Fed Up, the documentary, I think it opened up this box and it made you and I both look like, oh boy, like I'm eating a lot of sugar every day at work. I'm eating the cookies, the yogurt covered raisins, all the stuff I mentioned earlier. And oh, by the way, all those carbs and snacks I'm eating, whether they have sugar in them or not, my body thinks it's sugar and it starts breaking it down as if it were sugar. So my blood sugar goes up anyway.
Yeah.
And that's a recipe for diabetes. So I think it's important to explain. In 2019, in September, I was pre-diabetic at this point in my life. I probably was clocking in anywhere from like 230 to 240 or more. I don't think I was at 250 at this point.
I don't know you specific weight at that time.
And
but
I
remember
probably,
seeing you getting rounder.
I think you felt like it was probably a result of the job and the snacks, the access.
Possibly.
And I was like a person that didn't like to limit myself. I would just keep going back for more and more. And I would get a little, and then I thought I was being healthy because I would go for a walk at lunch every day, or I was eating these healthy snacks or whatever. And like, I was not coming home and eating more sugar that necessarily, but I would probably have like some kind of a dessert in the evening. The point is I was not in a very healthy place. You, on the other hand, were not necessarily unhealthy or pre-diabetic like I was, but I think the sugar documentary impacted you a lot as well because you knew that you were binging on it in the mornings, in the early hours, and a lot of your gym time was kind of spent burning that sugar off.
I could honestly say right now, I was addicted to sugar. I had sugar addiction because my first thing that I would eat in the morning, it was a cookie. It was a cereal loaded with sugar, oatmeal with sugar, and coffee with cream and sugar. I spent so much time putting sugar in my body in the morning because I thought, well, at least I would burn it off. And the picture you showed me yesterday from, I don't know, 2015 maybe, 2014, so 10 years old.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but yeah, it was jarring to me too because I didn't remember you looking like that. Like flabby.
I wasn't
and I'm not throwing you under the bus by saying that.
I
like,
know, but I wasn't chubby.
You were going to the gym 2 hours, like 3 or 4 times a week back then, 2 hours at a time.
Doing cardio.
Lifting weights and doing cardio. You were doing both. You
I
had
was
the
doing
gloves.
both, but I was like, well, I need to burn it. So cardio, because that's the mentality back
Well, you were having some success with it, but I would argue since we, 4 years later now, you look way healthier today than you used to back then. And that might have been 10 years ago. And we're both in our 40s. So it's not something that comes easy to people at this age. And we're kind of defying the laws of physics, if you will, because you and I are both aging and getting healthier.
We're aging backwards.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, as I said, I was pre-diabetic, and I think seeing that in the documentary and seeing the link between sugar and obesity kind of become apparent in that documentary was, how do we stop diabetes? I don't want to take drugs. I don't want to get on medicines. Like, how do we stop diabetes? You know, my grandfather was diabetic. My dad's father died of a heart attack in his 50s. Like, okay, I'm 39 here. That could lead to some short runway in the future. I don't want that. So, okay, what do we do about this? There's some, kind of came to like a moment here. And I want to point out we had just moved to Los Angeles for the first time. So Headspace was in a really good place for like new, for embracing new. Explain how you came to the conclusion that we should try and find the answer through actually what we were eating.
The documentary opened up a doorway for me to seek out knowledge. It was like a rabbit hole that I went into to find more information about sugar.
Yeah, it was only the first phase, you know?
Right.
Like the documentary itself is a great documentary because it spiked your curiosity even more.
This is about sugar. What else I need to learn in order to fill in the gaps? Because our nutrition information from school is non-existent.
It's very minimal. I mean, when you ask, I think most adults on the street, how like talk show hosts have that game, like word on the street, when they go and ask people like, do you know what the capital of Iraq is, or do you know what the capital of France is? And people don't know. But in a serious word on the street segment should be, do you know how food is broken down in your body? Because
I guarantee you that they don't.
That people don't know what's happening once the food goes down their throat and comes out their ass later. They don't know what's happening.
They don't. And when you even ask basic question, what is a carbohydrate, what is a protein and a fat, and they will be lost.
Well,
at least 90%.
It's starting to get that way. I knew what they were growing up, you know, and unfortunately lived in a place where I grew up in the 80s and everything was like anti-fat, anti-fat, anti-fat.
The 80s, that's where it started. Low fat, no fat, and everything with sugar.
Well, and this is going to lead us into the answers and at least what unlocked many of the mysteries for us is fat. When you started learning about sugar more, it led to a bigger realization that our body breaks down a lot of foods as sugar, not just sugar.
Right.
So all of a sudden, pasta,
bread.
Nikka loved bread.
Oh,
guys.
gosh.
And bread is one of the things that we have not eaten in almost 4 years. You know, at least 3.5 for me. I know I was slower to get off of it. Maybe, I don't know.
That's okay.
But whatever. But like bread and pasta, when you eat these things, are broken down by the body as sugar. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Most carbohydrates, whether grains, pastas, which are made of grains, breads, cakes, you know, oatmeals, your liver sees it the same way. Fructose and glucose, those two components, nothing else. Everything breaks down to fructose and glucose by your liver. So whether you eat a candy full of sugar, it's still gonna break it down to glucose and fructose because your liver doesn't get directions when you eat certain things to break it down a certain way.
There's no map or directions. It doesn't come with instructions.
Doesn't come with instructions. Your liver just functions the same way. Food doesn't come with the instructions.
But perhaps it should. You're kind of raising the point. No one wants to admit that there's like an optimal diet for human beings. Everyone wants to embrace diversity and that we're all different. And everyone wants to avoid the fact that like we're 99.99%, all of us, whether we're Korean, Japanese, white,
black, brown,
African, whatever, wherever the hell we live, we're still 99.99% the same. We are all made of the same space dust at the end of the day.
Yep.
Like we are unique to this planet and only.
We all bleed red.
All bleed red. We're not Vulcan.
No, we're not. We evolved the same way. Nobody is 10,000 years behind. We are all human species. That's it. We have one ultimate diet. Does it vary based where you live? Yes, it does. Because you have access to different vegetables, fruits, or whatever, sun. But underneath the hood, we all the same.
Well, we don't have a lot of time to get into the nuts and bolts, and a lot of these topics that we're flying through right now are going to become their own podcasts in the future, and we're going to really deep dive into a lot of it. But to keep things moving forward right now, what we learned is like diabetes, heart disease, even like mental diseases like Alzheimer's and other advanced brain diseases. A lot of it is caused by the food we eat. At least these are the answers that we started to learn as we investigated sugar more and came across. Also, we were researching how people were losing weight. And this was also I should point out, in the sake of time, December 2019 is literally 3 months, 2 months before COVID hits the first time. The big shutdown, everyone's staying home for the first time. So as this is happening and everyone's freaking out about their health, you and I are about 2 to 3 months into our new lifestyle journey. And I know we're jumping around and all over the place, but we're sort of looking at this as like a great segue for our lifestyle, because all of a sudden we are in total 100% control over the food we eat.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us.
Just the two of us.
I'm no longer going to an office to work, so we're eating just at home. I'm able to find time to exercise and get out and jog, which was a very slow process for me. But a lot of things started happening at the same time. And well, and you have to forgive me, this is like a really hard episode for you and me to get through, because it's covering a lot of topics in a broad way very quickly, because we just don't have time to sit here for 4 hours today and get into all these individual nitty-gritty approaches. But the long and short of it is, we watched the documentary about sugar. Nikka goes out into the world and explores more sugar and comes back with the conclusion that, look, I think we need to eat more fat and we need to prioritize fat and protein over carbs. And I'm sitting over here going like,
What about my
no candy, no chips, no nothing, like
no
what?
snacking?
No snacks at work, you know. And she's like, no, it's going to be okay. We're going to eat bacon and burgers and stuff all the time. And I was like, okay, I can maybe live with that, you know, like eggs, okay. Bacon, yeah, I'm good. Sausages, great. But long and the short of it is it's like we learned that while the mainstream world promotes this idea that like carbohydrates are energy for you, your body can also use fat as energy. And you can pick a lane here, you know? Now, you can cause some really unhealthy combinations if you mix
Yes.
carbohydrates and high-fat diet. However, if you just choose to run mostly on fat as opposed to mostly on carbs, whoa, doctor, the health benefits start coming through loud and clear just by the results of living.
And you see the results.
And you see like that the world now has been manipulated into believing that carbohydrates are good for them, basically, and they're not. They're designed to keep you eating.
That's why they are promoting eat every 2 hours. 3 main meals and 3 snacks. That's 6 times a day that you eat.
Well, it should surprise no one that as we started adding more fat to our diet, we began to eat less often throughout the day.
Yes, and we saw the weight coming off.
So fast forward, we've done the COVID thing now. We're like 3 months into it, and one day I decide I'm going to get on the scale. I haven't weighed myself in a while, and oh my gosh, I'm down big time, 20 pounds plus. It's working. Holy crap. And I had gotten down like close to 200 at one point in my 30s and never was able to crack through the other side of that. I'm not a tall guy. I'm 5'10". I'm not supposed to be a 200-pounder as an athlete. When you look at like athletes in the 5'10", 175, 180, with all the muscle on them in the modern era too. So I'm still overweight at this point, but I'm seeing results because I'm not 80 pounds overweight anymore. Like I'm not 245, 240. I'm 207, 210. But this really was, I can't explain how motivational this was for me. And I almost immediately began exercising again because I looked at my age and my life and I was like, this might be my last chance to reverse what I've always not liked about myself, which is my weight. You know, and I'm saying that as somebody that is almost 40 years old. It's something that you live with. It's a hard thing to live with. So I want people that might be listening to this that are heavier or maybe even on the heavy side of things. It's never too late to change. And you're probably going about it the wrong way. And it's not your fault.
It's
the
not.
food is designed and rigged against you.
Yes.
The game is rigged against you from the start. Look at the amount of sugar being advertised to you just watching a sports game, or well, that's all we watch on TV. So
but you're right, the commercials on TV are either pizzas, chips, Coca-Cola, Pepsi.
and as we just mentioned, It doesn't matter if like that pizza, there's going to be sugar in it.
It's all sugar.
And it's going to break down in your body as sugar. At the end of the day, when you poke your finger after you eat, your blood sugar is going to be spiked, I bet.
And that is a great device to have. And I wish more people will wear continuous glucose monitor, but you have to be diabetic to get it. Otherwise, more people will get educated.
Yeah.
And the powers that be, I don't think want that.
All right. Well, needless to say, it was sort of a miracle to find out after all these years that the answer to my problems, to my obesity, to my pre-diabeticness was through food, and not just through food, but by eating the very foods that they said would give me heart disease and clog my arteries up and give me all these problems in the first place. Those were actually the foods that were starting to cure my body. And spoiler alert, I would go on to lose another, 37 pounds? I got down to 170, and that's about where my weight is today. So it naturally came off just by eating. And yes, I began exercising, I began running, but I started at like maybe a mile or so at a time. I was really out of breath. I was able to increase my distance up to like 8 miles at one point. Nowadays, I try to shoot for like 4 to 5 just because of the time. An 8-mile run would take me like an hour and a half, and I just necessarily don't always have 90 minutes to just go for a jog in the middle of the day. Also, I just want to maintain what I have. The 4 to 5 miles at a time will cut it.
Yeah. But you enjoy running.
I do enjoy running, and I enjoy the endurance and the challenge.
Yeah.
You know, and I think one of the things about running that's great, it provides feedback. It provides what psychology would call reinforcement, where you can literally see yourself running further and further and feeling better about it as you progress. Whereas if you start at a mile and you're huffing and puffing when you get back, I would almost be willing to bet that if you kept up with it and followed through for a month, you would probably be doing 3 miles without huffing and puffing anymore. It doesn't take long.
But the running wasn't the force that drove you weight loss. Running came later when you were already losing weight.
I think what I would tell people is that the running really helps with the last like 10 or 15 pounds of your journey. It's always the hardest weight to take off.
But it also allows you to eat more, to eat the things.
Oh, yeah. So I kind of want to end by telling people where we are now today.
Sure.
You know, like I think we've covered a lot here. We've talked about how we eat a lot of fat. We eat a lot of like eggs, burgers, steaks, sausages. You make a chicken pizza now.
Chicken crust.
It's a chicken crust pizza, and we'll share this with you because, you know, we don't want to give up pizza. We love pizza.
Yeah,
and
this
Nikka,
pizza.
God bless her wizard skills over on the stove, has found ways to provide us with some of those pleasures and not break our diet or lifestyle, as we call it.
It's definitely not a diet because we've been living this lifestyle for almost 4 years. And
Yeah, and we're never going to stop, really.
you cannot unlearn things that you learned.
There's too much evidence in our own personal lives now to convince us that we are living the optimal human lifestyle in a sense from a food perspective. You know, do we overindulge on some ice cream and stuff? Yeah, but we got ways of going about it that we're going to share with you. That's the beauty of this podcast. You don't have to give up everything. You know, this isn't about that. This is about satiation and about really changing your relationship. You know, like my taste buds changed as a result of this. So did yours.
Oh my goodness. Again, going back to my sugar addiction, everything needed to be sweet, everything. So I understand people that have the same issues, that mustard has sugar in it, that ketchup has sugar in it, because your tolerance for sugar goes up. Like every addiction, alcoholic will need more alcohol in order to get that kick. The same with sugar.
Yeah. And it's the combos. Well, like I said, we got a lot to get through, and we're going to be back behind the mics often and early. We're going to talk about everything from pooping, because our pooping has changed dramatically. Mine has. I got a frowny face there.
No. Pooping is a good indicator of your health.
Believe it or not. So we're going to share about that. We're also going to talk openly about our sex life.
I was just going to say, morning wood is a very good indicator of health.
Well, just remember, if you take away one thing from this conversation, that fat, the enemy of your heart, so to speak, also is like the #1 ingredient for your brain and also your balls and ovaries, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
So when you talk about hormone regulation throughout your body,
You need fat.
your body is also programmed to respond better to certain food.
Your hormones are your body signaling devices.
All right. Well, I hope we've given you a good overview to sort of start digesting what a few of the topics on this podcast are going to be. But today, Nikka and I generally eat for 90 to 120 minutes every day.
Well, we eat one meal.
We eat one meal, but we eat a meal and we kind of clean up and get all our plates, and then we'll have a little snack or a dessert afterwards. Generally, you make some great low-carb pancakes. We make some cakes sometimes, or we'll just get the high-fat, low-carb ice cream that's made with sugar substitutes like erythritol, monk's fruit, stevia. We're going to be getting into all of this throughout this podcast, but just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what our life is like, because this is a lifestyle podcast. We literally eat before sundown, generally an hour or two before the sun sets is what we like. We don't like to eat when it's dark. Our bodies aren't programmed to eat when it's dark out, guys. This is another thing that impacts your health. But yeah, we eat an hour or two before the sun sets, and then we get all of everything wrapped up in that time, whether it's our big meal or our snack, it's all over. And then we fast for about 22 hours again. And breaking fast is not breakfast, guys. Breakfast is a made-up word.
Yeah, marketing people again.
But breaking your fast is a real thing that did exist for many years. And they just took that and ran with it and said, hey, we got to fill you up with sugar first thing in the morning. Oh, yeah, I digress. What do you think feeds that addiction all day, guys? If you snorted cocaine at 8 in the morning or 6 in the morning when you wake up, you would probably want to snort cocaine again by 8 o'clock.
I wouldn't imagine.
And then you would probably want to snort it again at like 10 or noon. You're doing the same exact thing with sugar. And believe it or not, it's wrecking your body.
Yeah, believe it or not, it's the same pathways.
So we have this 22-hour fasting window about approximately, and then we have about a 2-hour feeding window where we're not eating constantly for those 2 hours.
We do not. We have one big meal.
Yeah.
Where we prioritize protein. Good, healthy protein comes with fat. So
I'm talking about, like, when we say big, 2 or 3 healthy quarter to half-pound burger patties, 2 or 3 apiece per two, guys.
Oh, yeah.
The little neekster over here. But so 2 or 3 burger patties. Sometimes we split a steak. With that, we have the chicken pizza crust that we aforementioned. 2 eggs each. And yeah, lots of
some
food.
Dairy. We put a little bit of cheese.
I guess I really wanted to say about food was that there's no restriction here. There's no real ever been a feeling of restriction. Like, oh, I miss this. I miss eating spaghetti. I miss eating lasagna. Actually, I've grown to resent the bloated feeling that comes with eating breads and pastas in life, you know, and I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it just for the taste of it, because it makes me feel like sick afterwards. And there's a lot that we can go on and say, but the main point is that there's no feeling of loss that I have felt through any of this.
I think I would go the opposite. I think we gain more by it because of the tastes.
And we mentioned something earlier called food freedom. And I think the biggest thing that you gain back is time.
Definitely.
You spend less time, not
Making
just eating, but thinking about food.
Thinking, making, go and get it.
It's so much time is spent by people obsessing over what their next meal is going to be, or
deciding where to go to eat, where to go, what to eat, what to buy. Everything evolves around food from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep.
This is not how our ancestors ate at all. We've fallen, no pun intended, we've fallen really far from the tree. Seasonal fruit, it was seasonal. You had to stock up enough to last the entire winter. So Nikka and I really, at the end of the day, I think try to promote more of an in touch with nature way of eating. Our ancient ancestors did not naturally gravitate towards eating corn. They just did not. They plucked carcasses and scraped the fat off the bone, literally. And that's what got us where we are today. Millions of years of evolution, whatever you wanted to call it. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to sort of put a bow on this episode. Hopefully you've stuck with us and you have a better understanding of our lifestyle and what we're going to be talking about on this podcast. But we look forward to getting into the nitty gritty of it. And we're going to be sprinkling in these video game and movie and TV series, why you should watch Well, it's going to be some fun over here. We really want to enhance everyone's life, whether from an entertainment perspective and from a healthy living perspective.
Those two should go together. Why you have to eat popcorn? You can enjoy beef jerky, for instance.
She'll get you into shape in no time.
Hippocrates, food is your medicine.
Yeah, it is. I think people don't look at food as medicine. People look at food as entertainment. And we're going to keep them separate over here on this podcast.
All right.
All right. We are going to wrap it up. We are getting our social media channels in order, but I'm sure by the time you watch this or listen to this podcast, if you go on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, any place like that, and search for Kanika Lifestyle, you will find our podcast, and we appreciate it if you follow and like us and subscribe and all that stuff. Really helps us out. Nothing helps us out more, actually. In the meantime, if you want to email or you have a question for us throughout any of these topics that we're talking about, whether it's cyberpunk or whether it's eating fat, please feel free to email us at kanikalifestyle@gmail.com. We look forward to getting your questions, and if they're good enough, we'll address them on the air. So please, if you do write us, by the way, let us know how we should refer to you on the air. Like if you want to be Sarah B, for example, or Nick C. I don't know.
Or you have a nickname that you like to use, or a different name, or you don't want to be...
Hey, Nick, what's your nickname?
Or you want to be anonymous. I don't know.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode, but we'll be back soon, I promise, and we will be posting episodes regularly about a variety of topics. We'll see you out there, and happy listening, everybody. This is Kenny. I'm going to sign off.
Nikka signing off on the other end. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful week. Take care.
Hey, yeah, don't stop, you proceed, 'cause this is what you need.